All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 7, Global Benchmarks in a Changing World. As the world, or Australia at least, seems to be moving forward and quicker, we're not doing these as frequently, I'm afraid. Our industry is evolving, and so is our community and our business, which is keeping us pretty busy. We still want you to pay it forward, though. Tell your colleagues, join us, get in touch with any questions or queries that they want answered for the events marketing world. So our purpose behind the PanelCast is to shift mindsets for a positive change within the sports marketing, entertainment and events industry. We want to bring you as many voices as possible from the greater marketing landscape. And the largest takeout we hope for our viewers and listeners is to inspire innovation and creativity. So tonight's episode is about moving with the times, how creative industries are impacted differently on different edges of the earth, from the tourism sector to experiential and digital events. From New Zealand to the US and back to Australia, looking forward into our future and inspiring the new face of marketing and events. We are so pleased to welcome Andrew Waddel and Ben Tuffy to the panel, plus resident panelist CT. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, how are you all?
Good, thank you.
So I'd like to introduce Andrew first. Andrew is Tourism New Zealand's GM for Australia. Previously the marketing director for global brand Red Bull, and years of experience in brand marketing, including, which I found out after sort of creeping your LinkedIn, that you also were marketing manager for a European beer Beck's, which is one of my favorites. Ben, nice to see you.
Hello.
So Ben is the creative director for Media Monks, based in the US, but they are a global agency, and he's directed creative marketing concepts for brands such as Google, Facebook, Adidas, Amazon, Nike, the list goes on. And then also CT, welcome back CT.
Thank you very much.
Our resident panelist, who's also my business partner and creative director. He's got 20 years in the industry producing global events and marketing initiatives, and currently working with some of our clients on a growth strategy and forecasting trends in our own industry. So here we go, global benchmarks in a changing world. So I thought we'd start with the most difficult question first. Favorite event of all time, guys? Ben, can you kick us off?
Yeah, right, I'll kick you off. Good question. Now I'm not a gamer, but I do love digital. That's my background. The biggest thing that I'm having FOMO about at the moment is the Travis Scott astronomical event on Fortnite. It was just incredibly massive. It was a digital event, so it's a bit different, but it also is digital.
Yeah.
But it was just mind-blowing, and there was 12 million people logged on to that at one time, so that's just insane.
How many?
12 million people.
Wow.
Live. So it was just something kind of different, change of times.
Yeah.
But that was kind of really like benchmark for like what the biggest like streamed event online. So that was kind of cool. And then I think it was like 28 million people saw it over the period of 5 days that the event was kind of running. So that was
that a US based?
Yeah, it was US. Oh, I don't know where the Fortnite head office kind of runs, but it was just like it's just that online game that everyone just logs into, but it was just insane. I wish I was there. I've seen all the recap videos and watched these gamers watch it, and it was pretty stunning because like Travis Scott is the brand itself, and just the way it was just art director, creative direction behind it was just beautiful. So that was like a different one. It was a different one.
Yeah, nice. And what about yourself, Andrew?
Was that this year?
Yeah, it was in April 23rd, I think it was. Yeah.
Sounds like good timing, hey?
Yeah, like that was it. Like it was right at the peak of it, and then it just hit, and it was just insane. It's worth watching.
Had they planned it prior to lockdown, or was it just happened to be?
I can't be sure. Like that amount of production that went into it is pretty insane. Like it's just stunning. But they pulled off something like I think that's the benchmark of like where things are going. Like for an event inside a game, it was just insane.
I remember hearing a really great way of describing the growth of esports, that it was developing in dog years. So for every 7 years of traditional sports, it was developing, it would take esport 1 year. So if you just take football as an example, its ability to shortcut to go from, mainstream to global sport. An example you've just given there, 28 million is sort of up around football World Cup type numbers and stuff like that.
Amazing, yeah.
Good example of the growth that's gone through.
Yeah.
I like that example of it's like they're growing in dog years. I like it. What about yourself, Andrew? Your favorite event of all time?
I was thinking about this. Mine's a sort of type of event rather than one. I love football World Cups and rugby World Cups, mostly in the sense of how they navigate from weeks out, 4 to 6 weeks out, with 30 plus 24 to 34 teams, whatever they end up having, to this one event over this period, and how they build up from not just in the sporting success, but then the crowds follow them. And I just find the ecosystem of business management, event management, and sporting prowess just this. I find it infectious. And just to get to the optimal or top end of that sport is just just feels like the world celebrates with it, particularly football. World game, but I think that's why it's interesting in comparison to esports, because it's rapidly catching.
Yeah, I'm super interested what happens with the Olympics next year, like where that goes as an event similar to that, bringing together, building it all up, coming out of what we've come out of this year.
And they do it all in 10 days or something, don't they? 2 weeks.
Insane.
So.
Yeah. It's they're gonna get themselves an extra year on planning. So I think this is definitely going to be the best one.
Yeah, we have heard from a few marketing directors around that the extra year has given them a lot more time to plan. So we'll be expecting some big brand activations, I think.
The world will be watching, won't it?
It certainly will. All right, serious stuff here now. Andrew, can you please explain your role and the importance of tourism?
Go from big jump, isn't it?
I know it is, but
no, that's all right. I think you're talking about purpose before. It's sort of something I'm sort of deeply connected with. So I work for Tourism New Zealand. We're the Crown entity that works on behalf of the government to promote New Zealand in the international market. Enrich New Zealand, the lives of New Zealanders through contribution of international visitors. What's interesting, I think, is when you take enrichment, which is about putting in more than you take out, and then the contribution is ultimately you think automatically economic, but in reality, the way that the world's going and it should be going is people want economic benefit, they want social benefit, they want environmental benefit. So it's the and how do you get economic and environmental and social benefit and community benefit? So it makes it a tricky task, but it's definitely got a deeper purpose to it and a deeper impact. So my role is focused on the Australian market. So I've been across changes in recent times of just through everything really, whether it be Australia going through bushfires, Kari Island volcano eruption in December last year, and now more recently COVID-19. So it's about navigating that current the business and market and consumer context and what that means for tourism and travel. And then when the supply side is what happens in New Zealand or in Australia from the tourism sector.
Quite the job.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely I love it. It's amazing. It sort of combines deep love of New Zealand marketing and a passion for doing amazing things on behalf of the country. So yeah, feel pretty special and humbled by the opportunity.
And obviously, New Zealand have completely eased their restrictions recently. How did you prepare for that ease of restrictions in the communication? Yeah,
so it's New Zealand and Australia have been they've gone down different strategies to manage the COVID and health restrictions or health challenges. So New Zealand went down an elimination strategy and Australia went down a suppression strategy. They've sort of both got to relatively comfort levels of control and management of it. New Zealand had quite an interesting approach. They had really defined levels, so level 1 through level 4 in escalation. And then Australia's more had guidelines based on social distancing and different sort of rules by different states. So interesting about the New Zealand one is I can talk to my mother who's 75 or my nephew who's 19, and they all have a really clear understanding of those levels, and with that a sort of clarity on what's expected of them, but also what happens at that next level. So New Zealand went from level 2 to level 1, which then has eased all restrictions, and they've removed all social physical distancing. But the move from 3, 2 to 1, or 2 to particularly, was really quick, and it was sort of projected, and people started behaving like that already. So the government sort of quickly moved and sort of caught up. So I think there was some of the restrictions. Oh, got internet unstable. Is it back? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So gotcha. So some of the preparations is sort of 2 to 3 days. So an example was domestic tourism was opened up at level 2. In New Zealand, as an example, only had a couple of days to sort of prepare for that. And you think of the event or the sticks behind their organisation and to fly a plane, let alone prepare for scale up of operations, was significant. But the opportunity drives the.
Oh, sorry.
So, it's not whether you get 2 days or 2. Oh,
You've broken up again. I'm sorry. It's fine. We can.
Okay.
So where we left off just then was about Air New Zealand, that they had to scale up for basically going back.
So so a lot of when they eased the restrictions, it was only a couple of days for a lot of people to prepare, particularly people like Air New Zealand. What we've found with our scenario planning is that you have to be ready for the earliest opportunity and then adjust as you go. So rather than sort of waiting for the day, you just got to make sure you're ready and doing everything you can to be in the best possible place to turn on operations.
And is that what you're doing from an Australian perspective? Like, I mean, obviously you don't have a crystal ball. So how long do you think you're going to get to plan, or have you already come up with those scenarios so that you're ready to make those changes?
As long as you're prepared to take an informed view from a marketeer. I like to say marketeers have an ability to make themselves really important and really busy.
So I think that means you do have a crystal ball.
I think it'll be more complex than opening up domestic borders. So because you've got 2 governments and then 2 of everything. So you've got 2 customs and immigration, etc. So, but in saying that, there's an estimate anywhere between 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Queensland government has just announced that they'll open their domestic borders on the 10th of July. So what's that? That's sort of 3 weeks. So I think there will be 2 to 3 weeks, but you're talking, just think about the scale of it. It's restarting or starting international travel. I mean, that's a once in a lifetime moment that will just never, has never existed before.
Mm-hmm.
Probably previous to that was World War and those sorts of things. But it was, so it's a significant moment.
Yeah, the level wasn't there then. Like, it's massive now, right?
Yeah. So it's so whether you get 2 days notice or 2 weeks, you just have to throw everything into it to make it work. And try and bring it to life for people, because yes, there's tourism, but there's friends and family, there's compassionate reasons for travel, there's business, there's education. It's like people's whole lives have been sort of thrown into a bit of disarray. So it's amazing that this infrastructure of air travel has been a really big part of people's lives, and potentially has people have a newfound appreciation for it.
Well, I feel this kind of puts the events industry into perspective, actually, because we're looking at events around the country trying to start back again. And CT, you probably know more about this, but the NRL, AFL, sort of all the larger codes, they've not had that much time to start back again. And announcements of 25% more people in stadiums. Can you expand?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think within that, we've already seen the NRL, as you were saying, the NRL and the AFL resume. We've already started to see the first crowds come back. And so, with that, we're having that unfolding, happening that we were expecting, but it's actually happening a lot faster, I think, than anyone was expecting. And, that's probably evident in, us looking to move back to 25% capacity in the stadiums, in July. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start to push back towards thousands of people inside the stadiums, obviously under levels of distancing. But, that's a pretty massive jump. We were expecting originally that we might jump from 100 people to 500 people. We're talking like jumping to 12,000, 10,000 people in some of these facilities. And so that's a pretty big jump, which, is amazing. I guess on the other side, we've also got, the V8s coming back this month. We've got F1 starting again in July. We've just seen, massive, crowds in New Zealand, Andrew, with the rugby, and all of these things are massively positive for our industry out here. And I guess on the other side, we've also we're seeing the events community come together with the formation of things like LEAF, which is an overall body for live events and live entertainment coming together, which is incredible. We've had other associations which were specific to segments in the market, but we're now getting a large body that's going to help the industry move forward. So it's pretty amazing, and the industry is buoyed by it, to be honest.
I think it's quite a good indicator of bounce back. I mean, the example used in Auckland, New Zealand's National Stadium, Eden Park, if they went 43,000 people, it's the biggest Super Rugby crowd they've had in 15 years. And someone asked me about it today, what it meant, and it was like, what marketeer or anyone or even, community wouldn't want to be a part of that sort of moment? It felt like, test match, and it'll be the same whether it's 25% in a stadium or not. But that coming together, that's why you go to events, isn't it? Like it's
unbelievable, yeah.
That collective pool of hope and human story and human, the sort of hero's journey through those sporting events and sharing that. So it's I think it's an exciting time when people do start getting back into that expectation.
It's an experience to be part of.
Yeah.
You want to be part of that community getting back together. And then Ben, you're working over in the US. Well, you're actually currently in Byron Bay. Lucky you.
Living the dream.
But you're working for a company over in the US. Can you just first of all tell us your role, and then about the market where your campaigns are predominantly based?
Sure thing, yeah. So I work for a company called Media Monks, and we're a global creative digital production company. We're currently in the sector between like creativity and technology, creating brand experiences for a lot of the big brands coming out of the States, but global as well. So we touch almost every market at the moment, and it's been quite interesting. Like we've been in a pretty good position considering we've got one P&L as a company, so we were never sort of tied to any particular market or fluctuation there. So there was no sort of hesitation for like brands on us. It felt pretty good. But like my main role centers around like building brand experiences on a platform sense. I've come from an e-com background, really working with Google and others on that consumer journey. So people coming through that whole experience from the awareness layer into the engagement and then sort of off the purchase. But more recently, it's been a little bit more exciting pushing into the event space for digital. What we can do there for the brands in like San Francisco. A lot of big companies are looking to sort of shift their events online. And we've just been sort of thinking about like, what does that mean? Like in that, like you don't want to recreate what you get at an event if you go online. That's one thing that we're learning quite quickly as we sort of dig deeper into these users and consumers out there. Like we're understanding that that's not necessarily what we want to recreate or what brands need. But we're generally just trying to, create something new and innovate in that space.
Well, it's a completely different market, right, to where Andrew's working at the moment of looking forward to bringing people back together in real life. And then, but in the US, that potentially isn't going to happen for another few months. So being able to recreate those experiences online. What's like the key messaging that you've been using in the last few months? Like what's your approach to clients or to consumers?
Yeah, for the clients being out, like that's where we get our business from. We've just wanted to reassure them that like we're a stable company to work with to create the content and create the creative that they need. They're going through so much over there. It's incredible what they're having to deal with. So those brands themselves are a little bit unstable. Some can deal with it. Some may sort of like they're fighting bankruptcy. Like things are dropping off for them, like that's incredible for them to deal with. But we're just letting them know that like they've got a company that can support them throughout this process, and really building them up and just focusing on the creative work that they need. So it's just letting them, spinning it from a negative into the positive, and just showing them that like there is a future out of this, and like helping them establish like how can their business pivot to digital, and supporting them getting through this time in digital. And ideally, what I love is like building up equity for them as well. So anything they kind of implement and build and create, we kind of give them a platform that like they can continue on in that path as well. Because I think ecom now has just hit a new place. I think it's going to change a lot, or has changed a lot from this moment. So it's like whatever they're creating and investing in, they can fulfill that and support, like continually build upon that in the years to come.
Yeah, so building an asset for the brand while they can't necessarily get out there and speak to the consumer.
Yeah.
And Andrew, because I'm sure, well, potentially yours has been completely different, your messaging to the consumer. What's yours been like in the last, say, couple of weeks?
Yeah, so we sort of didn't rush. We really wanted to make sure that we understood and was respectful of consumer in context, and similar to what Tuffy's talking about from a supplier perspective, it's really to huge amount of empathy and trying to understand what either your partners or suppliers are going through, but also your operators, and also through to the consumer. So there was a lot of sort of, I felt, knee-jerk response, and the need to put something in, and I think brands who have...
Oh, you've frozen again.
Thinking they needed to be heard up again.
Yep, go. You're back. You're back.
So brands have sometimes or companies think that they need to be heard rather than having something stronger to say. So we sort of put a piece of work out that was acknowledging the chance to sit back and reflect, and really sort of focus, particularly from a Kiwi perspective, what Kiwis felt was important in life. And that was about, whānau or family, and time and presence and appreciation. And that was a message not just for Kiwis but also for potential visitors. So we wanted to connect with those that had a strong relationship with New Zealand. Interestingly, that is online as well. Like, people can't travel at the moment and won't be able to some time.
We will share that on our Facebook group. It was an incredible video, actually. It really moved me, and I thought, oh my God, this has been such an amazing time that we've got to sit back and spend it with our families. And it was a really nice communication, I think.
Yeah, and people are trying to think how they take those habits forward, so that, because they're habits at the end of the day, aren't they? About, behaviours that you've sort of got newfound appreciation for, and you want to carry them forward. And so I think looking forward at sort of what you've learned on the journey and what you want to take forward with you, as well as sort of refresh and reset. But I think it does carry a level of optimism to it and positivity that takes you forward. So yeah, that was our message, really. New Zealand's always been in the very far corners of the world, as Australia, both long haul travel markets, and they're dream-based opportunities to travel there in the future. So we just need to keep that brand and our messaging and our spirit, top of mind and a part of that.
Yeah,
it is interesting, because I feel like New Zealand has always been a lot more connected to themselves, like to their land and to their people. And so, like, I feel like it was it's a really well connected piece.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's a great piece of work that came out of the global team, but it's deeply connected with who we are, about people and place, and that's expanding, to purpose and planet, and the sort of the Māori values are deeply ingrained in sort of Kiwi life. And they really shine through. They provide the sort of guiding light for it.
Yeah, it's really authentic, yeah, for sure.
I think from all corners of the earth, it's just about being positive moving forward, and showing what, the good things are about community, and the good things are bringing people together, whether it is online or virtual, or bringing people into a live event.
It really is that, isn't it? That's the big thing at the moment. Everyone's centering around community, like that, longing to be a part of something, and like have that sense of belonging. Yeah, we're finding that a lot as well.
Yeah, I think.
I was just going to say it's one of the key insights that we've been thinking about, of particularly between New Zealand and Australia. There's this sort of feeling of there's always been a sibling rivalry, whether it be sport, banter, and things like that. Vendors move towards that solidarity. They're sort of stronger together as one, or as one. And interestingly, on Friday, the FIFA 2023 World Cup is going to be announced, the host country. And New Zealand and Australia are have joined as hosts,
really?
joint bid. And their hashtag is #as1. And you couldn't get a on the moment better tag right now of two countries that have worked really hard to look after each other, look after their citizens, be a leader in the world, and be stronger together. And I'm really hopeful for it. You've also got a female prime minister in New Zealand, so it's sort of cards are looking good. But I love that sentiment of working together, stronger as one. You don't elevate yourself at the expense of someone else. You elevate each other together, because I think in this time, no one. If someone loses, everyone loses. Like it's, you've got to win and then help others win, versus that sort of tit for tat. Probably what we were very used to by that stage.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's sort of something we started to see with the bushfires here in Australia too, isn't it? That everyone coming together. We probably didn't expect that we were going to be doing the same thing a couple of months later, but it's amazing to see the spirit that's actually shone through these couple of fairly major crises.
Yeah, it's funny too. It's a lot of people are starting to meet their neighbours for the first time. You could say, new relationships are being born because you're home more and you're seeing neighbours.
Well, even in our industry, we've had a much more, I suppose, localized. A lot of the industry has started getting together, and as CT mentioned, we've got LEAF now. There's also a Mass Participation Alliance, there's a Sustainable Event Alliance. It would be great if they all came under one umbrella, but at least people are starting to work together, because we had recently put an event plan forward to the Australian COVID Health and Sport Committee, which got passed, which was amazing. But then when we took it to Queensland, they need an industry plan, and we're one of the only industries that don't actually have a governing organisation. So LEAF are going to be really good and instrumental in being able to make sure that events can go ahead later on.
It was interesting. It was a massive realisation, I think, for everyone in the industry to realise that we were one of the only ones that had no direction, nobody who could stand up and say, okay, this is where we go with that, and this is how we talk to the government, or this is we're already talking to the government, and so we can support you and we can do these things, and so.
Yeah, I think the government just got like 100,000 event companies all talking to them at once. And we're like, please, can you join?
Surprise! Because we won't back down.
Yeah. So.
I was just going to say, just while you were talking about the communication side of things, probably from the events point of view, just to bring it back there a little bit for us is, I think, it's important for us right now that we see people, showing support and going out and buying tickets. And, we are in a recession. We've talked about that in earlier episodes. We've talked about how
officially into a recession, isn't it?
Officially, yeah, and it'll probably be officially. Let's just say it'll be officially announced. Officially. At the end of this month. At the end of this month, right? And so what's going to happen is we're going to see people. We're going to see people who didn't realise we were in a recession. We're going to see some kind of dip in that space from that. And so, I guess what's important for us on the communication side is getting ahead of that situation. And also, we're also going to find in the event industry that later in the year, we're going to have this influx of everyone trying to do a year's worth of events in a 3-month space. And so everyone is going to be kind of, I want to say climbing over the top of each other, but we're going to have a lot of competition, really compacted, cluttered space in the market. So getting out and getting ahead of that from an events point of view is going to be really important in the communication space. And then also, given what's happened, what is actually is going to be extremely important is going to be communicating, the safety and the COVID measures and those sort of things, so that people have that confidence, and they're not feeling any barriers to purchasing and moving forward to going and participating in the event, or going and watching that event. And I guess a big thing with that is as we said, we talked about just before was the 43,000 people going out to the rugby, and we can see that people will dive back into things because they're dying for connection, they're dying to get out and do something, and feel something for real. So, there's definitely a want and a need for it. It's just going to be a matter of getting ahead of things and really, on a communication point of view, getting it right.
Yeah, I think with that, it's, generally we work with trends as well, in when to go out with your marketing, when to go out with your communication. Ben, I'm going to throw this to you. Generally, how do you spot trends in the market when you're looking at pushing forward a campaign or pushing forward a marketing idea? I mean, in situations like this, which have never happened before.
Yeah, exactly. From my take, it's like you're generally out there seeking insights into what's happening at the time, and I try to find the right insight to build upon. My industry, we're generally watching the tech markets, what's happening there, like how are they responding to certain things like this, and just in general, not just under the current climate. So I kind of meter on what's happening in that space, because with new technology comes some new app or some new way to connect with someone else, like is Facebook doing sort of groups differently, and like all that kind of stuff. We kind of watch that to sort of see what you can build on in that space. But generally just circle around in that space. Like I'm a big fan of just even keeping an eye on Twitter, because in America it's quite big still. Like a lot of people are voicing out like what's happening over there on Twitter. We know a certain person that does it a lot. But like it's a platform where people have that microphone, and you can kind of gauge where markets are going and what things are like popular at times over there. And then finding that, you can build some nice insights out of them. So that's one thing that we do in that creative industry, in that space, to help us kind of define where the creative's going to go, and just to build that on top of like what we've discovered in there. I personally really love like seeing what's been happening lately on social about how everyone's become like a little bit of a broadcast agency, like putting stuff out there, and sort of it's been an interesting trend to watch in that space about not self-promotion, but like especially like with the health and fitness space and around food, people sort of building up some beautiful content around that and promoting that, and that, that's infectious because people are sort of buying into that and sort of finding that community on that space as well. So yeah, it's been fun watching that. Like we generally, in our fast moving tech side, and digital creative, we kind of watch those spaces a lot.
Yeah, I think it's it's always good to look at other industries, right, to see what they're doing, which is as well why we get so many different panelists on to sort of give us these different insights. Andrew, you're obviously have been doing this for years and years, looking at trends and forecasting, and when's the right time to launch products and when's the right time to open events. How are you preparing and forecasting for the next 12 to 18 months?
Crystal ball, I guess. I think it's
this time taking notes.
Yeah. Sorry, more insightful position. No, it's still a crystal ball. I was reflecting on this because the 5-year plan, like 5 months feels like 5 years now, doesn't it? It's sort of like,
sure.
5 months takes us to November, but it feels like if you think of that as a planning scenario, it's as challenging as writing a 5-year business plan, isn't it? Sort of, you think you're going in a certain direction, but you really got to know. I think a couple of our sort of mantras we've been talking about to sort of position it in our minds is, what's the consumer in context, and moving from being consumer first. That's quite assumptive. That's quite solid. That what's the consumer? What does he need? Well, actually, I don't think the consumer really knows yet, because their context is changing so much. As Tuffy just talked about, everything. Economically and all those sorts of things. So you've got to sort of be empathetic for that change, and then use curiosity to use that to forecast, use that crystal ball. The other phrase we use is sit in the question, like what are you actually trying to plan for? And then by being sitting in the unknown and being comfortable in the unknown, it sort of that raises lots of opportunities. And then ultimately just trying to line them up and prioritize. So I think for us, the next 12 to 18 months is I'll look really simply keeping prime and keep sort of going and top of mind. How do we reignite when the Trans-Tasman Travel Zone is open and operational? And then what is the scale up? Which sounds quite aggressive in those sort of steps, but in reality, it's underpinned by reignite is about rebuild, business development and making sure that there's a supply base there, and scale up is ensuring it's sustainable over the long term, because, as you've talked about, Chris, CT, it's like those first 3 months will go very quickly, but you've got to maintain that demand so that the demand curve is consistent and long term and accurate. That's why I think the hardest job for us is that 12 to 18 month period, because it's there'll be new shiny things for the consumers to do, or and we've got to make sure that we're creating that demand that is there for the longer term, as much as you would for an event.
Yeah. We're seeing some actually incredible trends coming out at the moment. CT, do you want to expand on some
where we've been at
things we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just like every other industry, the initial jump was to just to hit to online, and I guess it was from our industry's point of view, I feel like it was a short term view in a lot of ways, to just jump straight to online, and it was a more of a let's just do this for now kind of situation to get ourselves through, and in the unknown, and not knowing how long this was going to last for, and those sorts of things. And then what's happened, and we're already seeing, is that we're fast forward jumping into 10,000 plus people in the next couple of weeks here, and that's a long way ahead of what we were expecting. And we had these conversations in the first couple of episodes, and we were really, the industry was really forecasting that we were going to jump from 100 to 500, and it was going to take a long time before we start to get to mass numbers, and we've really jumped ahead really, really quickly. On the innovation side, it's quite exciting actually, and I think we've been pretty excited by it from the start. But we're starting to now see a lot of suppliers and a lot of companies in the industry that are coming through with a lot of innovations. Some of them might be simple, but we're starting to see some really interesting stuff come through, and it's definitely going to drive the industry forward. It really is now and into the next 18 months to 5 years, it's going to be that time to innovate.
A lot of it's been enabled by tech too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen, and this is simple stuff, but we've even seen, ticker tech in the industries, going to Afterpay because we've got concerns for pricing and for reception. And so, this is something that have quickly gone about. We've seen Intix go to, COVID tracking through, with event data. And so that's kind of we've seen Mesh go to using phone data to monitor spatial capacities. We've seen another supplier, Multisport, go to a virtual timing app, which is a true virtual experience. So it's an integrated tracking, participant engagement, timing, and very cost-effective kind of approach. So that there's quite interesting kind of in-app experience, which could actually, become a hybrid event experience, which is interesting. And we've in previous episodes talked about VR and AR and AI. So there's really some amazing things that are starting to come through, and it's kind of exciting to think about, some of the extremely clever people that are going to start dropping these things over the coming 18 months, definitely.
That's the crunch moment. That's where it's going to start to happen now. Like the innovation is going to be pushed forward.
Yep.
Out of necessity,
yeah,
way, like people like longing for it. Do you think you're going to have more fractured, smaller, boutique-y kind of events kicking off over the year to come, like more bespoke ones, like more of those?
Potentially. Yeah, like I guess what also comes with tech, what you find is that it allows, the more tech we have, sometimes it allows smaller players to operate like big players.
Yeah.
So, maybe some of these things are going to become more accessible for smaller players, and maybe they'll be more creative.
Yes.
So it will be interesting to see, for sure.
And a hybrid of virtual and live events simultaneously living in the same space, I think is probably.
It could be the solution that no one ever thought of, that someone had just grabbed onto and said that someone's doing in that other industry is the solution. I can take that this way in our industry, and it could change the whole event industry.
Yeah.
Ben, VR is really much bigger over in the US than it is here, but it's never really had its time. But where we are at the moment, it's like we've just fast forwarded the consumer to being okay with technology more than they were 3 or 4 months ago. How do you think that VR has a place in events, or how it can work together a bit better?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest turning moments for VR at the moment was moving away from just purely game focus. It's actually turning more into like with quarantine, like they push games forward, not necessarily games forward, but like virtual experiences where you can meditate and do yoga and just go and be humble somewhere and take you to a location somewhere else. That's like a moment of escapism, and like that's kind of removed the violent nature of a gameplay action shot game. So that's been a bit of a jump, and that's been pushed into, like, you could call it mainstream now because through COVID. Moving on from that, that's where it's going to get a lot more exciting. I think that's when it's going to start to marry. I think this year there's going to be some nice stuff coming out of it. I think people are just understanding of VR. I think in Australia was like its accessibility to get the nice, great devices. It's expensive. It's incredibly expensive to get into at the moment because you need like a whole system to go that way. So it's not really something that you can have on the couch and just throw on and go. Like that's when that hurdle's jumped over, people are going to find a nice way to sort of find an entry point into it and have that ability to go and escape. So once it goes mainstream in a sense, that's when it's going to be more accessible to everyone. People still have their phones. There's the ability to do that, but you can have it, like the quality isn't there yet. So once the quality and all the merge of the tech comes together and those experiences go broader than gaming, I think that's when people are going to get more excited by it and find a way.
It's still yet to have its day.
It's coming though. I'm pretty sure it's just getting there now with like these moments of like people doing yoga with their headsets on. That's kind of interesting, right? But
but I mean, it's a more meaningful experience, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe I think we've spoken about this before, that we can go to, as my internet gone there? No. We have spoken about this briefly before, Ben, that you could go to a live event and then a month later you can revisit that live event through VR.
Yeah, that's the Travis Scott example I used earlier is an interesting one to sort of reference as well. Like what they did there, they just kind of rethought about like that whole experience. And like, I love the idea through VR, you could potentially, you're leading up to an event, you buy your ticket, you get a code, you look at that, boom, you have an interactive moment with that artist before you go to the gig. It's almost like putting on a CD like the old way. Like you put on the CD, you get revved up to go to the gig. You could actually have an immersive experience with these artists, learn a little bit about the catalog of the music or what the event is you're going to go see. So you're building it up. So the experience that you're having with these, like with consumers, is growing through technology. Like it's not just that one moment you go, and that, that can be monetized in amazing ways as well. So that's exciting for the event industry, like what they're doing there, especially for brands to have that moment to sort of after the event as well, deliver some nice packaging back, and like the brand experience continues. So I think that's super valuable. And it's VR, but it's also just like you're talking about before, Chris, with your phone. Your phone can sort of connect with you, like, and start to sort of follow on from that.
Yeah,
but it's
the tech is getting us to a point where a lot of these things are a lot more accessible to everyone, and the networks and everything can handle it, and so we
can all just put VR goggles on and go to New Zealand.
Right?
Sure.
Let's wear that.
And do yoga in Byron Bay, and then
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, is it like so? I feel like well, we'll see what happens, Tuffy. But you're obviously in a space, you're working in a market where it's going to be a while for people to get back to the normality that we've kind of fast forwarded through it a little bit here. And so maybe that VR, we might not get the same uptake straight away, but if that takes off through the US and larger markets where that are still affected, and hopefully we'll get that trickling down to us, and it would be pretty amazing to see the applications that we can adopt here for events, and as you say, the post-event campaigns.
Yeah, and it's also like the accessibility for people, like people that now have a fear to go to live events. Like there's a space in that. There's a market there. There's a problem to solve of like giving them the confidence to be around people, but they're not necessarily physically going to do it anymore. That's just
and
enjoy. Don't know what the iProduct is, so we don't know what it's going to be like in 3 months with people like that.
There's something as well that we've been talking about relative to that online or immersive experience and VR and things. And quite often there's a sort of belief that if you've done the VR, then why would you do the real thing? And it's sort of a little bit like saying, well, if you've been to a rugby match, you don't need to go again. It's sort of it's cumulative. Like the experience is built up and up and up, and you want more and more and more because the spirit it builds in you, sort of thing. So I think a little bit like that with VR. It's sort of like if you do go and do a virtual experience in Milford Sound, you're sort of going to leave a little bit wanting more of it. So, it'll open up more people who experience it, but then it's not going to prevent people actually wanting to see it in real life.
Absolutely, and it's an enhancement.
I think, it's going to be interesting. So I think we're potentially breaking through that barrier.
I think we could look back at it in time and go, oh, it's like living without a mobile phone. Like in 10 years, it could be like, oh, I don't have my VR headset. Like it could be just a little thing they drop in.
Remember that time the phone was attached to the wall?
I still can't get the visual out of my head of yoga with the VR on.
I know that would be hilarious. It would put the balance out, wouldn't it? Not that
you think, yeah, definitely. Doesn't make sense. That doesn't. No. Meditation, maybe, yeah.
This time has gone very quickly. It's been a great chat. We will start wrapping this up anyway, but I said we weren't going to ask any surprise questions, but I've just thought of one, if you don't mind answering, is when these restrictions ease, what events are you guys looking at going to?
It's got to be like a live music event, like just to be rubbing shoulders with people. Like it really is. But it's pulling up to a car park and like walking across the grass. That smell, like I'm kind of longing for that kind of feeling. But something upscale, I think that's definitely.
Maybe a Splendor up in Byron or something.
Yeah, the tickets go on sale next Monday, I think.
Oh, do they?
I think that for locals,
right.
I think I'm right there.
I think I was going to say the same, that I definitely would love to, or look, we'll probably end up at the snow anyway, but maybe the festival with a little bit of social distancing, maybe that might make the festival all for the better, mate. That might be the new festival experience. less sweaty experience.
Definitely.
What about yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, the last event I went to was actually a festival, days like this, and it was sort of just on the edge of restrictions coming in, and it was interesting looking around, because I remember looking around going, no one is thinking about physical or social distancing right now. So I think it'll pretty quickly crash land back into existence, and because they're just great experiences and they bring together that people, and I think that cultural moment, which is significant, and the grass is one such for Australia as well. So yeah, I'd be festival, I think. And
footy games festival.
Yeah, footy games festival, and probably ski field. They always feel pretty significant in the sense of gathering of people as well.
Yeah, I went down to Perisher last weekend actually, and got my kids out on some snowboards. There was no ski lifts or anything going up, but it was just nice to be there and think that it was going to be busy potentially in about a month. All right, well, I think we're just going to wrap it up from here. Thank you so much, guys. That was a really, really fun conversation, very insightful. Thank you to all the people that have listened. We'll be posting this up on our Facebook group. Please pay this forward, share it. Please invite people to our Facebook group. send us in questions, and we'll put them forward to our panelists in the next episode.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, guys.